So welcome, and we're going to be talking about owls, and we're going to actually see what the owls are digesting and eating based on their pellets that they produce. So kind of as a reminder, we've got the owls up here, and we have a whole large food web that's associated with them. And one of their common prey are going to be voles or moles. Every once in a while, when we're looking through the owl pellets, we may find a bird in there. But you may also find some of these larval beetles or some caterpillars, which the owl didn't consume directly, but they may have consumed indirectly. And so what is an owl pellet? Right? So it's very common that a lot of students will be dissecting owl pellets. And so when an owl consumes and ingests his food, they don't have forks and knives like we have. And so what they do is they swallow the whole organism that they've consumed. But unlike animals like hyenas that can digest the bones, they're more like us in that they can't digest the bones and the fur or the feathers in the case of a bird. And so it goes into the structure that's known as the proventriculus, and it is before the stomach, and the bones will sit in there and they will eventually pack together. So it's a very soft packing and it generates a pellet. And then about 20 hours after the owl has consumed his diet or his meal, it will regurgitate the casting of that owl pellet. And so farmers will go out and they will collect those owl pellets and then they're sent to a laboratory where they're sterilized. So when we're digging through them, they will be sterile. And so by looking at what bones we can find in that owl pellet, we're able to better understand what owls actually are eating. And so the lab today is going to be, and you'll have a bone chart that you can look at, and you can look them up on the internet. But the lab today is going to be taking one of these owl pellets and dissecting it and seeing if we can determine what it's been eating, okay? And looking at these bone charts. And so just as kind of a reminder, helpful hint, you've got to think about our bones have a form and a function to them. And that's going to be the same in the moles and the voles and the birds. So when you're trying to identify some of these bones, think about and relate it to what its function is in humans, right? So some of the larger bones, you'll find your femurs, your humerus, your radii, those will be in there. You'll find sometimes some rib bones. That's not uncommon. We may find the scapula or the shoulder bones over here. We'll often find the skull, and in the skull, we'll often find the teeth still intact in there, okay? We'll find some jaw bones in it. So what you're gonna do is in your packet, you should have a pair of gloves. These have been sterilized, so you don't have to wear the gloves, but it's just a good practice. Now, I'm using a paper plate, but you can use a paper towel, aluminum foil, anything that you're comfortable with, just throwing away. All right, so we're going to put our gloves on, and then we have our owl pellet. We have a couple of toothpicks to help us get the stuff out, and then we have our worksheet. Okay, and so on our worksheet, it tells us and shows us some pictures of some of the common shapes and bones, and then it's related to some of the bones in humans. It has a key to help us know a little bit more about what type of organism that it did consume. And then it talks a little bit about what the owls are eating and what an owl pellet is. So a good review for what we've just talked about. So when you get your owl pellet out, you're going to unwrap it. And you'll see sometimes that there's bones protruding from it. And there's lots of hair. So your voles and your moles may have hair and stuff. So you can sometimes pull out little individual hairs that are in there. We start seeing some little droppings and castings. So this may have come from one of the other herbivores or something that was caught up in that food web. So don't just rip it apart. It's always better if you kind of gently tease it apart and you start looking in here and you'll start identifying and pulling out these different bones. Okay, so here's one bone. Now, granted, there's a lot of fur packed around it, but the first thing you need to do is just tease out these different bones and put them in a pile. Okay. And so we may not know exactly what bone we're looking at, but then later we'll go to the bone chart and try to figure it out. Okay, so there's lots of different bones in here. So here's a little rib bone. Okay, you can tell by its curve. Use your toothpicks, okay, which are sharp, so you don't want to force it, but sometimes these get to be very tightly packed together, so it can kind of help tease apart some of these really tight areas. And I thought I saw, yeah, here's a jawbone in here. All right, and so the fur tends to get packed up all in the skull. So we're going to slowly try to tease it out. Oops, and it came apart a little bit. But here, a little fur off of it. Right, so we can see there's the teeth on there. These are probably some molar teeth up here. And so then taking something like this, we could go over here and look at our bone chart and we would ask, so it's probably looks more of like this rodent, and we saw here's our rib bone. And then we can come back over here and we can come back and visit, oh, what did this bone look like? Where did it line up? Okay, so seeing if we can match up, you know, kind of its shape and its form and its function. So it's probably more of a hind leg type of bone in there. And so every once in a while we'll find some that have two skulls in them, but generally the owls are going to eat one prey, and then they're going to have one casting from that. And so have fun digesting and studying all about owls and what the owls have been eating locally.